Welcome and thank you for attending this joint stakeholder meeting via webinar. The date is July 31st, 2023, and the time is 2 p.m. Before we get started, we would like to introduce the staff members from the Division of Professions and Occupations that are present. My name is Darcy Magnuson, and I'm a regulatory analyst with the Division of Professions and Occupations. Also attending is Nate Brown, Policy Analyst, and Maria Hernandez, Regulatory Coordinator. So to give you a quick overview of why we are here today, is to solicit feedback to see what, if any, changes need to be made to the Office of Audiology licensure and the Office of Hearing Aid Provider licensures rules regarding any conflicts that may exist between the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017 and the program's rules and regulations. So before we get to the stakeholder feedback, we're going to talk a little bit about the rulemaking procedure and stakeholder engagement, and then ask for targeted feedback, and then discuss next steps. So the rulemaking procedure, we are at the very beginning of the process, which is the stakeholder engagement phase of the rulemaking procedure. All of that is governed by the Colorado Administrative Procedure Act, which can be found in Title 24 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. So at this point in time, no decision has been made as to whether to proceed with proposed rulemaking. We are just trying to get feedback from stakeholders to determine whether the director should propose changes to the rules as they exist to resolve any conflicts that may be there between the federal legislation that I just mentioned and the state's rules and regulations. So as for today's meeting, the division has transitioned to a platform that is 100% virtual, and we appreciate your flexibility. As many of you have been to DORA stakeholder meetings before, we would like to reiterate the importance of your comments today. DORA makes decisions every day that may affect your life and your business, so your input is vital in the rulemaking process. Throughout this process, our goal is to create regulations that clarify and explain legislation, ensure minimum competency to enter and continue to practice, and provide only what is absolutely necessary for consumer protection without creating unnecessary barriers to the marketplace. As mentioned, your input will be part of the information that goes to the director of the Division of Professions and Occupations, as the director considers what, if any, changes should be made to the Office of Audiology licensure rules and the Office of Hearing Aid Provider licensure rules to resolve any conflicts that may exist between the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017 and the program's rules and regulations. As you heard at the beginning, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on each program's website by the close of business tomorrow. As this stakeholder meeting is held solely by webinar, please raise your hand using the hand icon if you would like to speak, and we will unmute your line so you'll be heard by everyone. Or you can type your comment in the Q&A section and we will read it out loud. Before we start, oops, I didn't mean to do that one yet. Before we start taking comments, we do ask that anyone providing comments, please state your name and the name of the organization that you represent, if any, and feel free to provide either general comments regarding the questions that we have up here, the targeted feedback, or if you have specific changes that you think should be made to the rules, you can provide those as well, and we will note those so that we can add that into the rules as they currently exist. And we do ask that you keep your comments limited to 3 to 5 minutes and try not to repeat something that was already said. But if you agree with someone else, please let us know. That helps us to know that people share the same opinions and there's a consensus, and we will note that as well. And the only thing that I wanted to go back to on this slide, so we keep all information, or we post all information, I should say, on each program's website under the Public Notices tab. The way to submit written comments, this was included in the stakeholder meeting notice that was sent out today, is to send them to the DORA_DPO_rulemaking at state.co.us email address that you're seeing on the screen. And once we receive those comments, we will acknowledge that we have received them, and then we will post them on the program website for other stakeholders to review. So that link is live. If we, like I said, once we get them, we post them. So keep an eye out there if you want to see what other people have said in addition to the comments that are made today during the meeting. So as for targeted feedback, these questions were included in the stakeholder notice, and this is what we are specifically seeking feedback regarding. So I have a raised hand. I'm not sure if it's from the sound check, but Terry Jacobson, I show your hand is raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. It looks like it went down, so it may have been from the sound check. Suzanne Hamilton, I have unmuted you.
Hi, Darcy. Thank you for this webinar. I really appreciate it. I work with the Colorado Academy of Audiology, and our question versus feedback is, how does the federal legislation and rules blend with our State Practice Act and rules established by the program? So I don't think that we have any specific comments. We just really have questions. I know that at this point, the department probably will not make a determination as to whether an audiologist or hearing aid provider should or cannot provide over-the-counter hearing aid options to consumers. We're just hoping that the department can look at our laws, federal laws, our rules, federal rules, and provide some clarification as to what can currently happen under our regulatory, different regulatory programs.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I think that that is an appropriate question. And I think that's the purpose of this process, is to see if there are conflicts and how those should be resolved. I don't think that the director has answers to those questions right now. So that's why we wanted to get stakeholders involved in this. And that's also something that the director is looking into based on some feedback that was already received. So good question. I don't have the answer to that. So more to come. Randy Holyfield. I have unmuted you, Randy Holyfield.
Hi, Darcy. This is Randy Holyfield from Colorado Hearing Society, and I really kind of second the comment that we just heard. Obviously, for us on the dispensing and practice side, and you on the regulatory side, it's a bit of a moving target with new players coming and going all of the time, with us trying to make decisions. Do we participate in this OTC space? And then what does that mean to us on the dispensing side? So we certainly anticipate that this will be maybe one of many meetings you may have over time, because it will be a moving target. And just all I would hope for is anything that we would do on our side, your side, governor's side, would be to try to add clarity to the consumer, because I'd say the biggest challenge I deal with is consumer confusion over Medicare, Medicare supplement, Medicare Advantage plans, insurance participation, third party, now OTC. So just, I think the best thing that we can ever do to help protect our consumers is to try to be as transparent, but also as communicative as possible. So we'll look greatly forward to just anything that DORA can ever do, not just on the regulatory side, but just on guidance and direction to us within the profession to basically communicate the best possible to the consumer to relieve confusion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And a couple of things. So I think that it's important, and I know I recognize multiple names on here are very involved in both the legislative and the rulemaking process. So what DORA can do and what DPO can do through the director, it would be to modify rules that are or may be in conflict with the federal legislation. So wouldn't be able, of course, to change any of the Practice Act, and I'm sure all of you already know what I'm saying. So that's why we were asking for specific feedback regarding what, if any, changes should be made to the rules. But that doesn't mean that there could also be potential legislative changes as well that would be outside of the director's authority. So it's really an open forum right now, because I think that there is confusion, or we've heard from stakeholders that there is confusion. And so we're trying to figure out the best approach, given the director's statutory authority through rules, of how we can clarify the current existing legislation or what other changes may need to be made. So I hope that helps too. And yes, there will be continued stakeholder engagement. Should any proposed changes be suggested to the rules, there will be additional stakeholder meetings before any decisions are made by the director to change the current rules. Anyone else? We do have a small group of participants today, so I'll wait a couple of more minutes just to make sure we don't miss anyone. And if we don't have any other raised hands, then we will continue and talk about next steps again. Suzanne Hamilton, you are unmuted.
Sorry to jump back in here. I think I just got ahead of what you were about to say. It seems as though the professionals out in the field do not have the answers. We're looking to the department for those answers. So I think next steps is what I was going to ask about.
Yeah, and so that will be taking the information to the director, and then having the director determine whether rules need to be changed. So that's why we were hoping to get stakeholder feedback, because that will be the only thing that the director does have the authority to do, would be to modify the rules to eliminate any conflicts. And I know that, I don't know if that's helpful, Suzanne.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. I believe that the Colorado Academy of Audiology has really posed more questions than answers, and I'm assuming that those will go to the director. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's what was sent in earlier, right? And those should be posted on the website if others want to see those as well. And I think keeping those questions in mind, and then also taking a look at the rules as they exist, right? And how could any of those questions, right? Those questions, how could any of that be answered through rule? That's really what we're looking at here. And if they can't, then where's the next fix, right? Since the director's authority is limited. Okay, I'm going to move on. So again, this process, Suzanne, sorry. I have unmuted you.
I'm sorry, I just keep monopolizing this. So I understand the director's authority is limited. I think what the professionals in this field are looking for is whether or not statutory changes need to be made in addition to the rules. Will the department make that determination, or is this something that we should have independent legal counsel looking at and then pursue legislation independent? We would prefer to do this obviously with the department and all affected professionals. But I'm kind of hearing that perhaps the director will only look at rules. Is that correct?
I can't speak to that. I can't speak to legislation at my level. What I can say is that this will be taken to the director and then he will determine next steps. So there, like I said, the legislative piece is above my pay grade. So I can't answer that question.
Thank you.
Okay, so as far as next steps, so to continue to receive feedback, like I mentioned, if you have any additional feedback that you would like to submit via writing, to send that to Dora_DPO_rulemaking@state.co.us. And then from there, the director will determine whether to make any changes or propose any changes to the rules if necessary. If that does happen, additional stakeholder meetings will be scheduled. And then of course, rulemaking hearings would be scheduled after that for both programs, for hearing aid providers and audiologists should changes need to be made to the rules. And so like I mentioned at the beginning, we thank you for being here today. We will post this recording on the program's websites. And then, like I said, all written comments as we receive them will also be posted on the websites. And I do have another raised hand, Sarah Barnes. I have unmuted you.
My question was for the follow-up steps. What's the timeline for that?
That's a good question. So I don't have the answer to that, because I think it'll depend on what needs to be changed, right? If it's a legislative fix, then that.
So I guess what's the timeline for the next step?
I don't know. It will be up to the director as far as if any rules need to be changed.
And when do you think that decision would be made?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just asking. Thanks.
Alrighty. So I don't have any more raised hands. So that does conclude the joint stakeholder meeting, and we thank you for your participation.